First of all, this has been, if you take the Indian heritage, this has already been described in our ancient codes as also in the Western code called the Hippocratic Oath. But you would see that this is more practice oriented. More concentration on the physician as a researcher came through the modern codes, the international codes. You heard so many times about these things. So, I am not going to repeat that. You see that the American Medical Association right in 1957, section 9 describes that the physician may not reveal the confidence entrusted to she or he by the participant when you have the medical on medical grounds, medical attendance grounds. But when it is required by law or when it becomes necessary to protect the welfare of an individual or the community from where that participant comes, then it may become necessary to breach that confidentiality. But in 1996, again this was reiterated and the court was within restraints of law, because you know that law changes from time to time. So, whatever is current at that time, within those confines it should be taken cognizance of. But then the American Psychological Association, now as you know, this confidentiality issue becomes more sensitive when it comes to sensitive areas like mental health, HIV, etc., where there is a stigma involved. So, in such circumstances, it is the American Psychological Association which brought forth an exception where permitted by law for a valid purpose, such as, and then lot of things are there, to protect the patient or client from harm. Now, this is important when I will be talking a little while later about a case. In the light of the decision by the court in that particular case, there were some changes made. So, we will come to that step by step. In Helsinki Declaration also, point 1 describes about the identifiable human material or identifiable data. It speaks about that. Point 21 speaks about the privacy and confidentiality of the subject and the information, so that the subject's physical and mental integrity and the impact on the personality of the subject is taken care of. In fact, these 4 tenets of ethical principles came from the West. And you know, in the West, autonomy is held high because you have the rights of individual much more than the rights of community given importance there. But in our circumstances, like the non-Western civilizations or cultures having their root from the earlier civilizations, you have a community background. So, when you are talking about autonomy, it actually involves individuals' right to self-determination, privacy and confidentiality. But in the Afro-Asian culture or the Latin American culture, where you already had a civilization influencing the culture, this cannot be strictly abided, because you do not live individually. You may still live in modern, in the urban settings, you may still live in the as a nuclear family, but still you may visit your parents on a day-to-day basis if they are living in the same city. So, that cohesion is always there, and anyone getting admitted in the hospital, the whole family rushes, which does not happen in the Western world. So, one has to always think about the connotation the word privacy and confidentiality holds in such milieu. With regard to access, privacy as privacy is the participant's right, and he controls it wholly, he or she controls it as to what is the kind and what is the amount of access she or he will allow. and who will have that access, and what means of access could be employed, or what aspect of the person could be revealed. Of course, it goes without saying that the authorization should be coming from the individual herself or himself, whereas in confidentiality, which as he said is domain of the physician, treating physician, physician researcher, that person may be forced to surrender some part of this private information, and the circumstances are, as I told you earlier, either when required by law or when there is a threat to an individual or a community. Again, there has to be a proper authorization in place. So, what is the sort of information that we can get? It is the genetic information, psychological well-being, then sexual attitudes, preferences, practices. A lot of social science research relates to these areas, which are very sensitive areas, and it is very difficult for the social scientists to design a study without harming the individual or the community which is involved in that. It is easier for the physician to take care of these things because he is more on the scientific ground. The softer side either they ignore or take care of only to some extent, but the social scientist goes into the milieu and is always conscious of the surroundings. So, they have to take more care about not getting harmed themselves also. So, substance abuse or illegal behavior which may stigmatize or alienate subjects may be culture specific also. Suppose it is communities confined to a particular area, then the community gets harmed. For an example, I can tell you that in Canada there is a tribal group, and these people of course have been marginalized. So, they have no job, they drink, they are lazy, mainly because they do not get the job. So, the thing is there were some researchers who went to these people and they got their blood and all those things for genetic analysis, and suppose genetic susceptibility was there for alcohol abuse, then what happens is the whole community gets stigmatized that oh, you are from this community, oh, you have to be careful if you employ this person. So, that sort of stigma comes through. And then when we try to protect confidentiality, what are the things that you have to take care of? This is disclosure during informed consent process, that is the main part, and then also the information which can actually lead to the risk of breach of confidentiality, as in the case of genetic research or even paternity issues, and then transmission of disease from mother to child, and this can lead to a lot of psychological risk, and the safeguards are ensuring that the data is secure and you have limited the access to this particular data. You have to have all this in place before you even try to bank that data, and of course, investigators' integrity is paramount in such circumstances. As I told you, there is psychological risk, physical risk in the sense that even the researcher can get beaten up. You must have heard in the media, you must have read also that a researcher was actually put behind bars because of the research pamphlets giving statements which were not liked by the local community. It was against their culture, that is what they said. Then insider trading, that is the commercial aspect. For example, clinical trials, you have 3 or 4 companies having clinical trials in various sites. They would like to have the inside information. This rivalry between companies is there. So, the insider information can go, and that causes difference in trading. So, that is the insider trading that you call, and it is very often happening in clinical trials. I could also tell you that sometimes the companies which have R&D sections, especially R&D sections, because it is huge and patent race for getting patents is there with the commercial angle. So, what happens is the researchers, some of these companies in India also, people doing biotech passing out from there or doing MSc in biotechnology, they do not have in the academic institution, they do not have the state of art facilities. So, there are actually very big companies who have opened up their R&D facilities for say summer training, some period. What they get from these researchers is the manpower, and what these students get from that is they get to see the state of art. So, it is a academia industry relationship, but then where things are involved which leads to patent, they are not allowed there, mainly because of this trading business. So, this can be avoided by education and then having conflict of interest policies. When you are joining an institution, you have to declare that, or ethics committees, you have to declare that you are having shares in such and such company. So, the confidentiality has to be maintained. In fact, you know, sometimes because the academia industry collaboration nowadays getting into the government agencies also. So, what happens is sometimes in the committee you may have a pharma representative because of the expertise available, but then there would be another pharma company which might be presenting their data, and then this could lead to a conflict of interest, because this person, if the integrity is not good, they can take away the material and do the modifications in their own company. So, there has to be legal arrangements, agreements wherever necessary. This is from a patient's point of view. That is, Mark Siegler, a physician, he is one of, I mean, this is related to access of the records. One of his patients, you know, he did some detective work and he found that 75 support staff had access to his records. Then he says that I always believed that medical confidentiality was part of doctor's code of ethics. Perhaps you should tell me just what you people mean by confidentiality. And that is very, very common in our hospitals and agencies. Now, from the physician's angle, there was this otolaryngologist, plastic surgeon in New Jersey who was detected to be HIV positive. What happened was, to his surprise, he got sympathy calls within few hours from the medical staff and within days from his patients. When it spread so much, it resulted in him being suspended from surgical services and his practice was naturally ruined. So, these were the early days when HIV was creating a big scare even in the Western world. And then there was a study where they interviewed people and they found that 96% had informal discussion for secondary opinion and 50% of this was with the office nursing staff, whereas 69% had open discussion in professional settings and 51% was purely out of medical interest. So, you know the extent to which confidentiality can be broken, but then you can still safeguard here if you do not reveal from where the person is. If it is merely for the sake of discussing the technical aspects of the case.
You are talking of privacy, is something like when you are just mentioning while revealing anonymity. So, while revealing any kind of a result, we need to keep even the place, because people could be identified. It is more important that the technical issues need to be discussed rather than the place or the situation where it has occurred, something of that
This
kind.
actually is a very important aspect. I purposely did not put that slide here because it would be covered in your stored samples and all those things. Anonymization, actually there are different steps. One is coding, you can have single coding, double coding, or you can have anonymization or anonymous. Anonymous means you just cannot get back to the patient, all the codes are broken, I mean the connections are broken. Whereas in anonymization, you still can get back to the person. But for that you have to have proper safeguards in place. Without that you cannot do that. Then this has actually offered legal challenges, and one of the famous ones is this California case, Tanya Tarasso versus Regents of the University of California. 1976 was a major judgment on this case. I will elaborate on this a little while later. And then you know very well that abortion is not allowed in certain countries. If you just look at that, Poland, see here it was in 1996, but 1 year later they had this criminal code for illegal abortion. This is actually creating a lot of problems there. And then in Argentina again against abortion, the thing is there, but you know very well that many people resort to abortion. So if it comes to the attention of law, then they are in real trouble. In Malawi, a rape victim, actually it is injustice. A rape victim resorting to abortion was actually prosecuted because it was against the law. And in India, most of you would be familiar what ripples it created when the case of HIV positive fiancé came in print media and all those things. I will come to that a little while later. The Supreme Court direction in this case was obligations of professionals to warn sponsor or lovers or would-be spouses of HIV infected patients who refuse to disclose their status and who refuse to engage in safe sex. So this is obligation of beneficence, which is overriding obligation of confidentiality. And this actually could be very, very dilemma creating situation for the treating physician. And you also have this influencing the public policy. For example, screening and testing of HIV in Goa state has been made mandatory before marriage. And public health hazard, mother to child transmissions. Then ensuring effective treatment of active tuberculosis for non-compliant patients. Then applied human genetics and DNA banking. All these have got implications on confidentiality issues. The other challenges that we are facing recently is about the electronic database. The second party access. You not only have the insurance companies as the enemy number one, but look at this, union leaders also can create trouble by trying to get access to that data. Of course, physicians in private sectors and defense establishments sometimes are under pressure to reveal certain aspects. And third party relations, that is what is going to be highlighted a little while later about the Tanya Tarasso case. Then assisted reproductive technology, this is a very, very, very dicey area where donor information is a fact which can create a lot of problems. But that is why if you go through our guidelines, you would find that certain salient points are there which speak about when to reveal this information. Then transplantation of course leads to paternity issues. I also know of a case where the bioethicist was brought the issue to our group mainly to get help about what should be done in such a case, that the daughter is offering to donate her kidney, but while matching they found out that the father is not her father who is to get the kidney. Now whether to inform her about that or not, or whether to just put it under the carpet, because whatever we say, a doctor is a human person and can be swayed by his or her own emotions and the moral integrity that the person has. So this again can be problematic. Here you guys are supposed to go and spread this message about bioethics in your region, and in time to come you will become experts in bioethics. and then you will become bioethics consultants. And at that time there might be people coming like that, and I would encourage that you form your regional group or something like that, form a group where people could approach you with the difficulties like that, physicians. Like now what they are sending us as email, they could send you people the email. So you find that there is always a conflict, or many a times a conflict between the right of individual or right of community, right to privacy versus right to information. Now you have this RTI also coming in, so that creates a lot of problems sometimes. Then right to confidentiality versus duty to disclosure. That's what the HIV case was, and also the Tania case. And when a right is justifiably overridden, it is infringed. You call it infringement and not violation. So judgment in confidentiality issues, what is good morally? Is it related to obligation or right? As he said, when we say privacy, it is a right of the participant. When we say confidentiality, it is the obligation of the physician. Okay, so where do you draw a line? How do you come to a agreeable decision? Does a rule or policy support the judgment? So whenever there is a law in the country or there is a policy, one should always have that framework, and within that framework you should work it out. When there is no such thing, then naturally it's the decision is yours. So to facilitate that, I just want you to understand that there are 4 models available. One is, in which such situations can be dealt by. Paternalistic, that you know very well that the physician is the person who decrees there. Informative is a two-way conversation on the technical aspects, and it is on equal basis. Interpretive and deliberative, you will know that a little while later. Who has what role in these 4 models? Anil is HIV positive truck driver wounded in an accident. After discharge from hospital, he needs regular dressing at home. He admits to the hospital authorities that he is HIV positive, but requests that it may be kept confidential. Now, what is the economic status of this driver? Poor. So, daily dressing is difficult for him. So, the best nurse is his wife. His wife is willing to do the dressing, but is unaware about husband's HIV status. Now, the HIV status actually is a stigma for his family and the community from where he comes. Then it, on personal level, it also causes psychosocial harm, fear of rejection by the family, and then there is also the risk of infection to the wife and family, and he cannot afford to pay for a nurse to do the dressing. What are the ethical issues involved? It is the interest of the patient and his wife is clashing here. So, the patient's right to confidentiality versus physician's duty to warn of the risk. What I was telling was the initial conflict that I showed you, that is the obligation to keep it confidential and the obligation to reveal it. So, you have learnt over and over again about the 2 stands that people can take, that every action should maximize benefit. And here in this case it would be happiness. So, the greatest happiness to most people. Then right action to be taken disregarding consequences. As I told you, it is always consequence related. Either you do the right thing without thinking of the consequences, or you do something thinking about the consequences. So, these are the 2 stances you can always take. What are the alternatives in this case? Tell the wife that Anil is HIV positive and ask her to take appropriate universal precautions for herself and the family. The other alternative is keep Anil's status undisclosed. Now, I was talking about the different models. Paternalistic you have no problems, because you know that it is the physician who is taking the decision. Informative, as I told you, it is a to and fro traffic between the physician as well as the patient. So, Anil is told clearly of the perceived risks and benefits, probable short term and long term outcomes both for himself and his wife and family, and the decision to tell rests with Anil. Interpretive, the physician helps Anil to derive a consistent response to decide what is important value, truthfulness as a core, or to withhold information. So, it is Anil who has to decide what course he should take. Now, deliberative, it engages Anil in a dialogue aiming to persuade him to agree to the physician's own choices, but avoiding coercion. So, there is very slight difference between this one and this one. Here the physician is exerting his authority. Here the physician tells him that, you know, I would like you to say this. Then he leaves the choice to the participant or patient. So, what are these consequences? If appropriate precautions were to be taken, probably the infection won't be transmitted to the wife. That is the advantage. Then it is possible that women being women, generally women are blamed for that, but I do not agree to that, men also do that, they tell others. Okay. So, possible that others in the family and the community may learn about Anil's HIV infection, and it leads to stigmatization and ostracization. And if you do not tell Anil's wife, she may not take adequate precaution and get infected, or eventually his family will know, and when Anil develops the symptoms, and he may suffer rejection, again the same story. Then eventually his wife will find out, that is also possible, and may blame him for having needlessly exposed her to the risk of HIV infection. So, this is the complex situation you can always encounter. Now, Day is HIV positive and is getting married in 1 month's time. Fiancé does not know Day's HIV status. What should the physician do?
No, my question here is, how does it concern the physician whether or not Day is getting married?
This is the exact technical, clinical, cold attitude of the physician. Okay, if you have number of patients coming to your clinic in a government hospital, you hardly have any time to get into the family problems of that person. So, you may not even know about it. In a private institution, they are just bothered about the time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, over. You can discuss this with your family and just push him off. But as physicians, we are not, I mean, there is something much more to that, and we have to actually find solutions, help him find solutions, if everything allows, like time allows, circumstances allow, because many a times a physician may want to do that, but may not be actually disposed due to lack of time and other things. So, here you have the conflict of rule between truth telling and confidentiality. This is where I bring to your attention the earlier Supreme Court thing. In our guidelines, we also state that when required by law, or when it is for preventing risks to the community or public health issue, then you can breach confidentiality.
When we are talking about really HIV issue, there is important part is how to prepare this particular person to tell the possible spouse or the fiancé in this case. I mean, counseling, this is where the role of the counseling comes, and if the person is prepared to tell and the importance of it, probably he may not want to disclose his own HIV status, he may bring the possible fiancé to bring in there.
So, she has brought out, I was expecting somebody bring that out. For sensitive issues like genetics and HIV, or maybe other diseases also which are of contagious nature, which the other people may not want to be transmitted to. In such situations, you really need to counsel the person before you even do the diagnosis. And after the diagnosis also, if the person turns out to be positive, then he will require a lot of counseling. So, that is the issue. When you breach the confidentiality, it is not merely breaching, you have other duties also to perform. Now, this is an interesting case. Have you heard about this case, Prasenjit Poddar? He was a man from Bengal who went to University of California at Berkeley. And you know, in universities where you have these foreign students and all that, they come and meet in some common hall or some common functions, etc. So there was some international house or something like that. And Tanya had come there for, you know, some folk dance learning and all those. So they got to know each other. And there was a New Year celebration going on, and at that time, naturally, there the boys and girls, they meet each other and all that. And in that process, you have this 10, 9, 7, and then come to 1 and then blow the balloon and say New Year, bringing in the New Year and all those things. And people start kissing each other and all that. Similarly, this lady, she kissed him, but he mistook it, thinking that she loved him. So when he approaches Tanya and she says that no, I don't love you like that, I can't get into relationship like that. Moreover, I have other boyfriends also. Then he became very sad, depressed about this rejection. And meantime, Tanya went for some holiday to her place in Brazil. This fellow went into depression and all those things, and his friends took him to the university doctor, and the doctor treated him and said that he is a schizophrenic person. But the physician knew that this person had the intention to kill her. But because of the confidentiality issues, he did not reveal it to anyone. No, he informed the police, and the police took him in their custody, but then released him, saying that he is thinking very rationally. And there was one doctor there who, as soon as he heard about this, you also have this doctor rivalry, no? One person says yes, the other person no. So similarly, the other doctor, he said no, he is perfectly fine. So he was released. In the meantime, Tanya returns, and when she returns, he goes to her house. Her mother is there, and she says, well, why have you come here? Because she knows the background. She said, why have you come here? Please go away. So he goes off. After some time, he again returns, and this time Tanya is alone. So he had his pellet gun and a knife with him. And naturally, he makes passes at her, and she refuses, and she screams and she runs. He shoots that gun, pellets hurt her, but she runs. Then in the garden, he catches her and then stabs her repeatedly, and she gets killed. Now the question came that he was mentally not stable, and finally he was acquitted on those grounds. But then the court took a stance that confidentiality can be broken. I mean, this is where the third party comes. The physician, the Tanya was the third party. He knew that this person was in the condition to attack this girl. So her life was in danger. Either he could have warned that girl or taken recourse, the police protection recourse. But then the other doctors contested that he could think rationally and all that. How could you confine him like that? So the court said that confidentiality can be breached, but if it has to be breached, the decision should be should rest with the physician. It is at his discretion. So again, it comes back to the physician. So that was a landmark decision actually. But in our case, suppose it was here, what should the physician have done?
He has done the right thing to inform the police, but at the same time he should have informed that Tanya also about this, so that a life could have been saved.
Any other opinion?
After the physician got to know about this guy's mental state regarding the history, instead of considering him as a potential criminal, he should have considered him as a psychiatric patient and probably not left him in the community until and unless he ensures that he is psychiatrically treated efficiently. I think informing the police was considering this poor chap as a criminal, although he was not a criminal as such originally. He should have been informed the psychiatric doctor before as a necessity.
Good. What I didn't tell was the treating doctor was a psychiatrist and he was under treatment.
Okay.
No, this
The
Prosenjit.
The patient himself was a psychiatric.
No. The
Then?
doctor, treating physician was a psychiatrist.
was
The
a
university doctor who
Oh, so
was a
then-
psychiatrist was treating him, but he knew that this intention was there. That's why after giving him treatment, he informed the police.
I think here the police supposed to inform Tanya that this guy has a problem.
She was in Brazil.
The confidentiality is to be breached. There are certain conditions, and under the conditions of breaching the confidentiality, one thing is you have to inform the police.
That he did.
Okay, but then the possibility of informing Tanya directly and the consequences. We are concerned about informing Tanya because this Prosenjit has killed Tanya.
They gave the same decision that it is the discretion of the physician to inform the third party. Okay, so what ICMR guidelines, you know what it says.
This is confidentiality related to cases like HIV. In bigger places, you have a pathologist in every what do you call
Institution.
Yes, institution, and also the labs. But in smaller places, you don't have a pathologist. You have just a technician taking drawing the blood and giving the results. So there is a higher risk of breach of confidentiality in places like ours, wherein a doctor is not involved in drawing the blood and giving the results.
So you are supposed to go back and create workshops or organize public awareness programs.